Welcome to Cracking Cancer, where we tackle the tough questions about cancer with real patients and world experts. Our mission is to empower the cancer community through education, bring transparency to the oncology system, and drive funding for critical cancer research. Whether you're facing a diagnosis, supporting a loved one, or simply here to learn, we're here to bring clarity, hope, and action to the fight against cancer. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cracking Cancer. I am your host, Dr. Kyle Concannon. I am a physician scientist at MD Anderson Cancer Center, and I am your primary host with Cracking Cancer. And joining me today to discuss how to best support your loved ones who have cancer is my lovely co-host, Samantha Morell.
Hi, everyone. Samantha Morell. I'm a patient advocate. I have non-small cell lung cancer with a HER2 mutation. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining again, Samantha. And today we're talking about supporting loved ones with cancer. Samantha and I have gone back and forth quite a few times about the social dynamics between wanting to support someone who has cancer and how do you do that? We had a previous talk about how you avoid stepping on, what I call the social landmines, because everyone has the best of intentions, but this is a new field for a lot of people and you want to help. We don't always know how to help. It's true for providers. It's true for loved ones. But Samantha, hopefully today you can give us some roadmaps on what we can do to best support you or other folks who are going through a similar journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was coming up with this list and I reached out to some other people too who were going through cancer for their advice on this, because it was really easy for me to come up with items that you should not say to a cancer patient, but coming up with a list of things that you should be saying or should be doing was weirdly enough harder because, like you said, there are a lot of landmines out there. I think a lot of times, like you said, they mean so well, but things just come out of their mouth and they probably think, oops, I really shouldn't have said that. Awkward.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about some items and actions that can be done if you know someone going through cancer and you really want to be there for them, but you just don't know how. So I have a list. So I'm going to be reading off this list and we can kind of talk about the different items. The biggest one actually for me I wanted to start off with is, how can I help you? How can I support you? There's a lot of people that will say to someone going through cancer, like, I'm here for you. Let me know if you need anything. It's such a broad statement. And honestly, someone going through cancer has so much on their mind. They're frazzled, essentially. And so if you say, let me know if you need anything, 99.9% chance that person is actually not going to say anything back because they just don't have the time, or they feel like if they actually bring up an item that is maybe more specific, that they're becoming a burden. It's kind of like, when people ask you at the checkout at a grocery store, like, how are you? And you say, I'm good. How are you? It's a very American thing. We don't do that in England. But, very rarely do people say, I'm not that great, and want to open up a can of worms to someone in the supermarket. So it's a very similar situation. Even if you're close with this individual, they're very unlikely going to go into the weeds of, yes, I actually have a list of everything that I need, and this is how you can help me. So that is the biggest item for me. And some ideas, as an example, are, a lot of people going through cancer treatment don't have the time to cook meals. So setting up a meal train is a prime example of an excellent way to help. Meal trains are easy to set up, and you can get food sent to your loved one, friend, family member, so that they don't have to think about what their family or them as an individual are going to eat for dinner, as an example.
I love the idea of a meal train, and getting back to the the idea of that broad, what can I do to help? It's funny because I've lived in multiple areas in the United States, and there are different social norms and like normal contexts or meanings behind those kinds of statements depending on where you live. For example, I grew up in New England, and by and large, people in New England, they're going to tell you what they think. And if they say, you let me know whatever you need in like the small rural place that I grew up in, you can probably call them with what you need. But then, I moved to cities in the Northwest where people are very pleasant. And that's almost more of a social pleasantry than like, I expect you to take me up on this.
Yep.
So they might be surprised if you're like, actually, I have the dog. Could you, like, they would be like shocked that,
Yeah.
but also, for the people who do want to really help, like, I don't know if like to your point, like here are some pragmatic things. They probably just don't know what could be helpful for you, or at least
Absolutely.
their idea of what might be helpful, might not be. And, I have this book that I read all the time. Like once a year, I'll read this book. It's actually over here. It's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that I highly recommend for everyone to read. And one of the principles in that book is when you're trying to develop a relationship with someone, to make sure that the emotional, he calls them emotional deposits into their emotional bank account, are seen as deposits and not withdrawals. You can be trying to help someone, but really you're burdening them.
Yep.
And you have to make sure that the nice things you're trying to do are actually helping. So I think it's really nice that to put that out there and acknowledge, like everyone wants to help. And you might say, what can I, let me know what I can do. But there's such a wide spectrum of how much one could impose on another person in good faith.
Yep.
That, how most people aren't going to take anyone up on that.
100%. And I will say, before we go into other examples of like how you can help, I know that there are some nonprofits out there that actually allow you to, if you're a cancer patient, you can create these lists, and they're lists of ways people can help you in your life. And so friends or family members can see this list and actually see where they can assist. And so it's a great way of the individual going through cancer sharing with everyone, like, these are the things we actually need, and this is how you can help. So I know that that's potentially a good resource for someone to utilize so that you don't have these awkward conversations.
Are these like the patient advocacy groups, or where would one look for that kind of thing?
I wish I was remembering what it was called right now. It was founded, the one I'm thinking of in particular was founded by a breast cancer survivor. She created this entire platform that allows you to literally write all of the things on a list that you would like people to help you with. Maybe we can tag it below on our YouTube so that we can list it out there. But it's I just think it's a great way to formalize all of the assistance that you might need and want without, like I said, having those awkward conversations.
So it's like a registry.
Yes, essentially. Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd never thought about that. People have their social groups, and that's a really interesting thought. So many people want to help, particularly when things are new and scary. So to have kind of a cancer support registry is a really interesting idea.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And other examples that might appear on that registry, right, are you brought up walking the dog. So like if you have a dog, walking the dog, letting the dog out, appointments take up the whole day sometimes. And I'm fortunate where we drop our dog off to my parents-in-law. And so the dog can go out, do its business and go for a hike, and I don't have to worry. But like Some people might not want to leave their dog for 9 hours during their appointments. So could someone help take out the dog? It is a prime example.
Yeah. And, along those lines, I think what you're so far describing are things that save time.
Yes.
And it's funny when my wife quotes this study that I don't remember, but it is like they did a study where they allowed people to have a certain amount of money and they could use it for certain things. And they found which things brought that individual the most satisfaction. And individuals who went out and bought things, luxury items or whatever, had no increase in satisfaction. But those who bought services that limited or that bought them time, like a maid service or, something to do their laundry or whatever. And then people who got plastic surgery for some reason, she quotes, but one of the most satisfying things one can do to help another person is to give them time. And, if you think about it, if you have someone who's close to you, who's wealthy, and they give you money, like that's one thing. And that's nice. It's especially for people who are going through this, but the emotional, to use that term, the emotional deposit, if someone gives you time, like you can always make more money. You can't make more time. So if you're going to show someone you care and you want them to know that they're not walking this alone, do you think the best currency is time? Is there something?
100%. 100%. The other examples I was going to talk about, like really apply here as well. Like having someone drive with you or take you to appointments. Not everyone has the luxury of a spouse like myself, who can take time off and take me to appointments for the whole day.
Yeah.
So like as a friend, can you go with your friend to their appointments and be there for them? And so it's all about, I don't know, just being there for them in a capacity of service. I think that's the absolute best way you can be there for them. The other one is cleaning services. So again, related to time and service, right? So if you can offer up a cleaning service, or maybe you enjoy cleaning yourself and you want to go and clean the house, maybe while they're at treatment all day, and then they come back to a clean house, or like clean sheets on the bed. Those small things, they might seem small to you, but they're really, really big. Really big, especially when you're going through such a stressful, like dramatic time in your life.
Yeah. And, you mentioned going with a loved one to appointments. And, for folks who are listening, it may not be clear what is socially common. And it is common that friends will go with other friends to appointments. It's not that position of support is not limited to family. And there are a lot of people who do end up going alone, and that's fine. That's a lot of people are just fine with that. But people often, like maybe as many as a third to half, are going with a friend who they're not related to. Has that been your experience, seeing that, in the waiting room, in the advocacy groups?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, I'm fortunate where my husband can take time off work. I know that's not the case for everyone, especially when you're juggling kids as well. Who's going to look after the kids? That's a factor too. So, I've definitely seen friends, other family members, extended family, just ensuring that person isn't necessarily going alone. And I'm sure some people maybe like going on their own. But for those that don't, having other people in the extended family or friend group that can go with them to feel that support, I think is really critical and important.
Well, and that's kind of a vulnerable thing for a friend to impose on someone.
Yes.
It may feel that way, like your healthcare is in its own sphere where we have HIPAA, which is, everything is really intellectually secured. Like even as a physician, to you, Samantha, I'm not supposed to be asking any personal questions. And
right.
Loved ones, friends, and family may not know what you want to, open up to about them. Do you have any advice for how someone might broach that conversation? Like they want to be there, they want to go with you, but they don't want to intrude into your personal life more than is, warranted.
I think it's pretty acceptable to be like, hey, if you need me to drive you to any appointments, I'm here for you and I'm available. And maybe broaching it as like driving you to the appointment instead of coming to the appointment with you is a good stepping stone. And maybe that opens up the conversation to be like, okay, well, you're taking me, so you should come into the appointment room, waiting room with me, and then I can go into the appointment, but you're knowing that you're there in the building just makes you feel a little bit more supported. So I think there's different levels, right? There's the driving you to, there's waiting in the waiting room, and then there's actually in the appointment. And I will say, like, when my mom is in town and she comes to the hospital with me, with my husband, she actually waits in the waiting room. And that's my own mother. So there definitely is a level, like you said, of, I don't know, just what is shared with whom and what you're comfortable with. And for me personally, I didn't want my mother to get overly stressed out by things that she might hear. And I wanted to be the one to deliver that kind of news. So that's just a personal preference. So it's just figuring out what the individual going through their cancer journey kind of wants. And like I said, broaching it of like, I can take you as the transport, I think is a good segue.
Yeah, I think that's pretty wise. From the provider perspective, we see all of those, dynamics happen. But there are situations where people come in with a friend and the friend really pushes and they want to support their loved one, and they can do so pretty aggressively, and it's, if it's supporting for the patient, like that's great. You do want people to advocate for you, but I always wonder how much of this is the friend needing to have something for themselves to do, like they need to take control, they want to help, and how much is it really benefiting the person who's in the driver's seat. That's a complicated dynamic, but I think the way you posed it, which is offer a limited amount of investment, the drive, and then let the person who you're helping invite you to escalate further into, the care. Do you think that principle applies elsewhere, like infusions, or, where else do you think that applies?
Yeah, I think infusions, for me personally, I haven't had anyone but my mom and my husband at the infusion area with me. And I actually would love to bring friends with me for that piece. I think that's very different from my perspective than actually sitting with the doctor in the room having a conversation about my care.
Yeah.
You see a lot more riffraff in the infusion room of just like, it's a free for all, right? I think there's a limit of how many people you can bring in the infusion room. I think once I was meeting another family that I'm now very close with, going through lung cancer as well. And we got told off that we had too many people around my chair. And it kind of counted as like a party event. So they got told to leave.
How many were there?
So I had 4 people.
It's a good amount of people.
Yeah. So apparently that was too much, which is understandable. It's having an infusion is a very intimate like situation. And so I totally understand not wanting that large amount of people around one person. But for me personally, I would love, I don't have many friends living close by to me. If I did, I would invite them 100% to come with me for the infusion aspect of it, because it would relax me. It would make me feel better about the situation. And then it would also be an education piece for them too, where I feel like they could learn quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think something that you mentioned before, we talked about ringing the bell and how
Yes.
we both don't really love the premise of ringing the bell.
Yes.
There are people in the infusion center and at every appointment who don't have anyone.
Right.
And I can see the push, particularly if you're the one supporting your loved one there, to keep that in mind. If there's 10 of you rallying around one person,
Yep.
the person who had no one to call might not feel great about that.
100%.
And that's a tough balance because your loyalties lie to the people you care about, but you do want to be cognizant of the community.
100%. And this is a side note, but I actually had a conversation with my nurse last infusion about the bell.
Oh yeah.
And because I don't have a bell at my cancer center, and I said how amazing it was that you did not have a bell, because for people like myself, we never get to ring it. And he said that they got rid of it. They did used to have one.
Yeah.
But that it was literally being rung like every other hour, and it became such like a party atmosphere. It's like you need to read the room.
Yeah. I mean, this is exactly what you were saying.
Yeah. So they got rid of it, and I said, "That's amazing. I'm so glad you did."
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine sitting and some of these infusions are long.
Yes.
People have multiple chemotherapy infusions at once, so it can be hours.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there for 4 hours in this chair, and if the bells ring, I mean, that's 8 times that bell rang.
Yeah.
And you're just like, it's so many people that, and the reality too. I know we're on a tangent here, but the reality is like people ring that bell for different reasons. Like you don't know what that really means.
Yeah.
But the person sitting in the seat means it's not you.
Yep. 100%. But yeah, it goes back to just reading the room, right? So like, absolutely, as a friend, just bridge the conversation, right? Like I said, offer up the ride, or just say, do you need me in some capacity during your visit to the hospital? And like, what does that look like for you? And just get a feel for it. And some people will reject you in the kindest way because they just don't want that, but someone might take you up on it. And it would really mean a lot. It's a very intimate kind of thing to go through. And so having a friend there, just know that if you are asked to go, it means a lot. It really does. It's a special thing for you to be there through something like that.
Along these same lines, for the patient, what are some ways to ask someone in a way that's not too imposing? And it's vulnerable to ask anyone for anything.
Yeah.
But particularly asking for someone's time, especially in today's culture.
Yeah.
I think, 20 years ago, 10 years ago even, it was a lot more normal for people to donate their time. I think that culture is shifting away.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any recommendations for people who like you're saying, would like someone to sit with them? How would you broach that with a friend, colleague, someone you'd like nearby?
So I've always been direct, but I think I've been more direct since I've been diagnosed with cancer, because I'm just like, whatever, I'm just going to say stuff. And so really, I think you just don't beat around the bush, just be straightforward and say, it would mean a lot to me if you had some availability for one of my infusions to come with me. And maybe you can find a date that works for both of you. And they don't have to come to every single one, but just one appointment. Just be direct. I mean, you have to just be direct, I think, in this day and age too, of what you really want and what you're asking for.
Yeah. Do you think that people growing up in the UK are more direct than us.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm thinking your your advice may be challenging for people. But what do you have to lose? What are they going to say?
Exactly.
And there's yeah. So if they care about you, I think they're going to be probably honored that you asked them.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
What else?
All right. So as we were talking about before, a lot of people will say some really absurd things because they just don't know what to say. So, one statement is, I don't know what to say, which is totally a valid thing to say. I don't know what to say, but I'm here to listen. And I think a lot of people going through cancer really just need someone to vent to, someone to talk to. So if you can be that ear for someone going through this roller coaster of an experience, then that's fantastic. And again, it goes back to you giving time up to listen to someone and what they're going through. So I think that's a really big one. And it's okay to say you don't know what to say. I would much rather someone say, I don't know what to say, or I don't know how to process this, or what to say to you, than them say the most absurd thing.
Yeah, and we've covered quite a few absurd things that
Yes.
that one can say.
Yes.
Reference to our prior episodes. Yeah, and how would you recommend building the space for that conversation, for that support to happen? Here it's like, do you want to grab a coffee? Do you want, there's always like, I feel like at least in the States, if any communication, any connection with another individual has to be around something.
Yep.
What are some suggestions you might have?
If I was the friend or family member, I would send them a text. Just be like, I'm here for you. I don't know what to say. I'm here for you. Maybe these are ways I can help. XYZ things. But I'm also here to listen. And say, like, can I call you at X time and let's have a talk?
I like that.
Yeah, be specific about it. Or, pick up the phone and call, that is a thing still.
Make a TikTok reel. Send them the TikTok reel.
It is a thing still to call people and just have conversations. But the big thing for me, though, is just understand that when you text or call someone going through cancer, especially, don't expect immediate responses. I have people texting me all the time, and I feel really bad when I don't respond right away. But it's just because it's just life. There's some people that are just really bad at responding, period. And you'll probably know, like, if your friend is like that anyway, and it's probably going to be even worse if they're going through cancer. I'm not the best at responding to people. You probably know that, Kyle, at this point. But no I will at some point get back to you. And then going through cancer, I've gotten even worse. And it's not because I don't care. It's not because I don't care about the individual that's sending me the message. I just have like scatterbrain, and I will literally read a message and then put my phone down and do whatever I'm doing and then just never respond. And so, the chemo brain is a real thing. And I feel very scrambled a lot of the time. And so just know that when you're reaching out to people who are going through cancer, that might be the case, and to not be offended by that, because I think a lot of people in this day and age can get quite hurt when you're not necessarily getting the attention that you believe you deserve from that friend. And you just need to realize they're going through a really big thing right now. And you just need to be patient. And if you reach out with actionable things, that's going to likely get more of a response than something that wasn't actionable in that message.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point too, is that I think the expectation of how quickly one would reply to this stuff, is different for each generation. Like our parents' generation, they'll get back to you on Tuesday. And, our generation is like probably sometime in the day. And I feel like, those, younger than us, it's like real time. You might as well just call, but calling is less common now. So yeah, I think that's an interest. Yeah, like there's different social expectations around communication dynamics, but no matter what that dynamic is, it's probably going to be delayed because someone's feeling pretty crummy. And I have a question for you. The people who they want to help and they're reaching out and they're like, I'm here for you. People who are particularly newly diagnosed are getting that from a lot of different angles. And it's like you want to help, but you don't want to impose, and maybe you're not really helping if you're making them rehash everything with you, the friend. So, do you have recommendations for expectations around how much input one might get back from a patient with cancer? Like, because I can see, if one of my friends or loved ones is diagnosed and I want to be there for them and they're not really responding, like the friend could feel hurt.
100%. Yeah.
So what do you think? What are your...
Well, first of all, there's this amazing tool called a caring bridge, which I haven't set up yet. And maybe, I don't know if I ever will, to be honest with you. Because for me personally, when people reach out and want to talk, when I eventually get back to them, it is very therapeutic for me to talk about my situation and what's going on. Like very, very therapeutic. It helps me. And I can't explain why it helps me so much, but it really does. And so I don't mind telling my story over and over again. For someone else, they might not have the time to do that. They might not want to do that. And so you can set up this thing called a caring bridge where you can post updates essentially of your journey on what's going on, what your treatment's like, how you're feeling, etc. And I think that's a really great way for your friends and family members to know like what's going on and how you're feeling in terms of side effects or just like what is going on, and you're juggling 500 things, so that they kind of get a sense of reading the room almost through this caring bridge of like, okay, well, it sounds like she probably doesn't want to have any conversations this week based on this caring bridge. So I think that's a good way to do updates for people if you don't want to be overwhelmed by everyone and their mother reaching out to you and wanting to know what's going on. I do Facebook updates probably every 6 weeks after a scan. So I'm updating like broader people in my friend group. But otherwise, like I said, I'm having those conversations because they're really therapeutic. For others, you might not find it therapeutic. You might not want to rehash everything that's going on, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think there's such a challenging line between coping and dwelling on. You don't want to keep reliving these negative emotions, but you do want to process them. And, for anyone who's gone through traumatic experiences, I bet relating to that phenomena of, you want to talk about it with friends, but you don't want to dwell. You don't want to just have that same experience, all those feelings of your diagnosis again with 20 different people, so I could see that not being helpful. That wouldn't be an emotional deposit in your bank account, your emotional bank account.
I will say though that, when I have had bad news and I've like updated on Facebook as an example, I'll get people that will just send me messages like saying, thinking of you, or you're in my prayers, no need to respond, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And those mean so much to me, especially A, because I'm terrible at responding. We've already clarified that. But B, just knowing that individual has thought of me and they're just sending me a nice, sweet note that doesn't have anything attached to it.
Yeah.
It is really great too. So I know we talk a lot about, or we have talked about, actionable items. I think just statements too of like thinking of you, or, things like that mean a lot. And there's no expectations to respond back to something like that. And I
not
think
giving you
that's
homework.
great. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I always, I make that joke when I get long text messages. It's like, this is homework. I can't.
And
so
when other individuals that I've met through cancer who are going through cancer journeys alongside me, we haven't been friends for years and years, and so you're still trying to figure out that kind of friendship, right? And so I've made it very clear to all of my friends who are going through cancer that if I send a message, I don't expect a response. Like, it's okay. Just know that I'm thinking of you. And I think they've really appreciated that. It's like set the foundation and expectations of the relationship, so they don't have to like suddenly drop everything when I send them a message and feel like this burden that if they don't respond, it's going to ruin our friendship, kind of thing. So, because I think a lot of people get nervous about that could this ruin the friendship? So setting those expectations, whether you've known someone for years or not, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think that's such a kindness to say, no need to respond. And that way it really does make the dynamic about the person going through it. And because that's something I always struggle with when I'm trying to be supportive for people, is how much of what I'm doing is because I want the emotional reward, of doing a kindness. But to eliminate that and say, don't respond, whatever, One question around the positive affirmations, like thinking of you, I've heard sending good vibes, those kinds of things. I'm a religious person, and I never send anything religious to people because I think
Interesting.
I just worry it's going to come off the wrong way, or it'll upset people. I know people have a lot of varying opinions of organized religions and things like that. What's your sense on the religious person sending religious themed support to someone?
So I will say I'm not an ultra religious person by any means, but people will say like, you're in my prayers. For me personally, that means a lot to me because it means that I'm in their prayers. I don't know, that like that feels nice to me. But I will say that it could offend someone else, right? Like you said. I would hope that if you're friends with this individual, you likely know where their line is in terms of religion. If you don't, I would say don't go there. But if you know where their line is, like, you should be able to know whether you're sending good vibes or you're in my prayers. So it's just figuring out that line. I was kind of chuckling at you saying you stay away from that because my mom went to her primary care doctor for the first time in Idaho. She recently moved to Idaho, and she broke down telling him about me having stage 4 lung cancer. And his response was, well, all you can do is pray. And my mom is the most atheist person out there. And let's just say she bit her tongue really hard and did not say anything. But it goes back to, if you don't know, don't say it.
That's been my default,
Yeah.
And I mean, the funny thing about that dynamic, I suppose, is that in our patient charts, we do see what the individual's religion is.
Yep.
And even, I'm Catholic, and even if I see someone else who's Catholic, I don't.
Yeah.
Unless they bring it up first, and then maybe I'll engage in that vocabulary.
Yep.
But yeah, it's again, to the thing, it's like, I'm here to support the other person, and I need to support them in the context that they live their life. Like, it's not about my system. It's not about my value system.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
an interesting one.
Yeah. So, those are good affirmations. That I like the sending good vibes, things like that.
Yeah.
But, you were mentioning the pragmatic, like, how do I buy back that person's time a little bit? Because I don't know if people appreciate just how much time is taken away from having a cancer diagnosis, going through treatments. When I was in medical school, we would, you go through rotations everywhere, and the big time sink for people was dialysis, because they have to be at a dialysis center multiple times per week. And I think rivaling that, or shortly behind, is cancer. It's so much time.
Yeah, it's so time consuming. So anything you can do to help with that, I think, is the biggest items. And especially if you're juggling kids, dogs, cats, hamsters, fish, in addition to where are we going to get meals from? Where are we going to get dinners from? In addition to who's going to clean the house? Just daily life chores kind of go out the window with appointments, but also side effects. Right. Side effects of treatment can be debilitating. And so just daily life of doing things is just gone, essentially. I'll say, like, I'm even bad. My husband and I have this deal that I do X things in the house and he does the other X things in the house. And like, when I'm having a bad treatment day, I even feel bad asking him to do like my X items, because I feel like that's just part of our partnership and what we agreed to. And so if I feel bad asking my husband to do something, imagine what other people feel like. Like, they're not going to ask their friends if they can come over and load the dishwasher for them. So like, that's not realistic and not going to happen. And that's why I think it's great that people have like these lists of things they need help with, or you offer up your time, because it's just not going to happen the other way around.
One thing that was phrased to me, I've always kind of had some social anxiety, and I struggled with, social dynamics, which made me great in medicine because I get to just study all the time. But I remember one of my friends had helped me because it was very uncomfortable for me to ask people to do things, to hang out, to do, social things together. And they were like, I picked up on something they did that made me feel good, which was to say, you should join us, rather than saying, we're going here, do you want to come? Because, that difference in phrasing made me feel wanted rather than tolerated. So, I wonder if, like, you have a lot on your plate, you should let me come help do the dishwasher. Like, I would like that. And then it's almost like the person going through the experience is now offering a kindness to someone else by letting them help.
Yep, absolutely.
Although, do you run into the problem of that person imposing, and
that's
you're
true
like,
too.
well, I actually don't really need
line.
you to. Yeah, like, I don't really want you doing my dishes.
Yeah, there's definitely a fine line there. And, I guess an area that you can help without physically doing things is by sending certain items that we can go into. So especially if you don't live in the same town, right? You're not going to suddenly drive 5 hours to do someone's dishwasher. So what are the other ways you can show that you care and provide support? So, you know, a lot of people have side effects, as we talked about, through treatment. And so what are those side effects? You know, some of my family members sent me care packages that had blankets in them and lip balm for chemotherapy, smelling things that you put under your nose that are meant to make you less nauseous, and just like things that help you with side effects is a really big item. And I don't think it's weird to have a conversation with the person going through it of like, hey, what might you need in terms of items that could help you have a better sounds weird me saying a better experience with treatment. You know, how can I help in that way instead? And so you can put together care packages, which, you know, I've received so many care packages in the past year, and I appreciate every single one of them. And they mean a lot to me. So, just making sure you send the right things in those care packages are critical, really.
I feel like there's a story here.
No story.
Okay. Like that's where the hamster was.
No story.
No live animals.
No story. No, I was just imagining, like as an example, I can't really eat meat anymore. Like chemotherapy has literally put me off red meat. I don't know why. I can't explain it, but it happened. And so the last thing I would want would be a care package full of red meat. Just figuring out what those things might be that the individual might not have, you know, I think is massive. You know, a nice robe, comfy pajamas, things like that. Blankets are definitely a big one, because people like taking their blankets to chemotherapy with them, to have some level of comfort of home with them. But then I've also been given positive affirmation jewelry, which I've loved. You know, there's a lot of companies that do them now, but they really help me, and I wear them on treatment day, and they just help me mentally, knowing that different friends have sent me different pieces of jewelry that I'm wearing, and they're kind of behind me. But my favorite one, and we talked about this offline, is my positive pickle. So there are these crochet things that you can buy online. They're like little crochet animals or pickles, and they have words of affirmation on them. So like the pickle one is a positive pickle. I think I have a positive potato as well.
As long as it is alliteration. I thought you were talking about just carrying around a pickle with you.
No, that would get very smelly real quick.
Yeah, it's like that. You really do need to know the person. Like Samantha she always has her pickles, so everyone knows that.
And this positive pickle comes with me to treatments every time, and it's a small little crochet pickle. And you know, it's just small things like that just mean a lot for me personally, and I think they do for a lot of people. Just knowing that, you know, someone cares about you and they're thinking about you, and here's something that might make you feel supported through an experience that is not the most fun.
Yeah, and you know, to the point we were talking about earlier, is you're in those infusion rooms for a long time.
Yep.
So having those memorabilia that are small and portable, you know, you're not bringing those like really big squishmallows or whatever.
Well, speaking of squishmallows, so I've been collecting those too.
They're pretty great. Yeah, I'm like, I get them as gifts all the time.
They're super comfy. I nap on squishmallows a lot.
Yeah.
So,
but don't they have like? I think I've seen them in Costco. These like human-sized ones.
Yes, I have one of those. Yep.
Did you ever bring that to infusion clinic?
No, I did not.
I bet they'd let you. I don't know if you want to be the person that does that.
They probably would. Someone sent me from work, like, I have a German Shepherd. They sent me a plushy German Shepherd. And so I take that with me sometimes to hug. And I don't know, it's when you're going through cancer, from my perspective anyway, you kind of regress a little bit to your youth and childlike form almost. And so having like creature comforts like cuddly toys, things like that, it just brings, for me anyway, so much comfort.
That's one thing I learned in oncology and medicine is just that we're all a lot more sensitive than we let on. Like we really are, all of us. Everyone's suffering. Everyone's going through hard stuff, and particularly when you're in that environment where people realize the suffering that you're going through, like the gravity is very high. Uh, Not to feel, I think it's important to not feel nervous about doing whatever makes you, feel better. And yeah, a lot of people latch onto that. The feelings of support, like we're all the same. There's a saying in medicine when you are on, your pediatrics training is like, oh, they're just little adults. And the flip side of that is adults are just big children.
Yeah,
So, uh,
100%.
yeah. Um,
100%. The big thing that I wanted to bring up though around all of this that we've discussed is, when a friend or family member is newly diagnosed, there will always be a rush of people, presents, gifts, cards, people coming around with cookies and cakes and meals and you name it when you're newly diagnosed because you're newly diagnosed and it's a shock to everyone around you and they want to do everything and all the things and be there for you. And it can be very overwhelming, which is why we've had this talk about, how you can better navigate being a friend or a family member with someone that has cancer. But, especially with a stage 4 diagnosis, people are living longer than ever before. And I think, for me personally, I'm coming up to a year literally in like a week, which is wild. And I don't have as many people messaging me anymore or sending me gifts anymore. That sounds weird if I'm like, I want gifts like every week. Why aren't people sending me? But, the level of people just being around is way less because, everyone, like you said, is dealing with things. They're getting on with their lives. They're just carrying on. And meanwhile, I still have this terminal diagnosis a year later that I'm dealing with. And, there have been some people that have been absolutely incredible and still check in with me, but there are other people that have really drifted off. And I will just say to someone who wants to be there for someone going through a cancer diagnosis a year X later, just be cognizant that that person is still going through exactly what they were going through at diagnosis, if not worse, because, they've gone through X treatments and, all the things are happening and more is going on. So just be there for that person in the capacity that we've spoken about, through their entire journey, not just at the beginning. And I think, that shows a true friendship. It really does. Just being there for them. If it's years, it's years. But that's what we really need as cancer patients is having people there for you through the entire journey, not just at the beginning.
yeah, and I think it's so human and natural to be super involved with someone else's life during those acute moments of uncertainty. And then once certainty happens, we all get back into our routines,
Yep.
And I think, I wonder, setting something like reminders for yourself in your calendar, every 2 months or something, every month. Just make sure you send that text message. Make sure you connect to hear how things are going. Because I mean, a lot of people, you have that initial spike of, I'll say, excitement for lack of a better word, in the beginning where things are diagnosed, but then uh, you'll have some sort of treatment up front, and those have varying degrees of success. And then eventually, many people progress. And that is another area of vulnerability where it's not in the beginning still. And even if you're not progressing, time around scans, the community uses the term scanxiety. Um, but yeah, those aren't easy times, and they're not times that you're probably going to hear about as someone who's in the social circle but not walking through it together. But you might hear about them if you're checking in.
100%. Yeah, I appreciate my friends the most who are not overbearing, right? Because there's a fine line to walk. There's overbearing for self-satisfaction almost, versus just vanishing off the planet, versus checking in just every month or so, just being like, hey, I'm thinking of you. Let me do X for you, or send someone a gift, or just saying I'm there for you. Goes a long way. And just know, and that just makes the person going through all of this know that you have their back. So it means a lot.
Yeah, and I'm someone who I'm probably as guilty of letting those things slide off as anyone. We get busy, and when things aren't at the forefront of our lives, of our thinking, we just forget about it. And you care, but you
Yep.
just forget. So setting reminders is something I have to do.
Yep.
Hopefully that's something that would be helpful. One we're getting close to time here, but I'm curious your thoughts about gifting, like TaskRabbit, or those are you familiar with that? It's
I'm not. I have no
it's
idea what you just said.
so that's an app. Like we're not like sponsored by them, not yet, but it's an app where you can like hire someone for 2 hours to do whatever. Like
Hmm.
they can help with laundry, they can do yard care. Um, that's the kind of thing that I could see saying, hey, do you need someone to cut your grass? I can, like, that is a monetary thing I can do that buys you time.
Yep.
And maybe if you're not near there or don't have the time to help yourself, you could say, can I get you? And it doesn't have to be TaskRabbit. That's the only app I know of that does this. Um, but yeah, I was thinking that might be a reasonable thing to offer someone to buy back time.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Well, I think we've covered a lot of things here today.
We have.
Any last thoughts?
First of all, thank you for listening to this podcast, because it means that you care as a friend or family. And then, second of all, um, going through cancer is an awful experience. And having friends and family around, knowing that they're there for you, provides a lot of comfort and makes the person feel left alone. Left alone? Wow. I did not mean to say that. See, chemo brain.
Yeah,
Chemo brain is going
it's
on.
real.
It is real. It makes them feel less alone. There we go. Did it. And so just know that you saying anything will make that individual feel like they are seen and that they are cared for. But if you can say things like we discussed, it will go a ways longer in terms of knowing that they feel cared for, because you really took the time and due diligence to ensure that you were saying the right things and providing the right things to that individual going through their journey.
Sure. Well, thanks again, Samantha, for, opening up and writing down all these insights for helping everyone else, helping the community, and all of us bond better together around this together. For those listening at home, remember to like and subscribe to Cracking Cancer, and you can visit crackingcancer.org to learn more about us. All of the profit that comes through us, or all the funds that come through us, supports the podcast, and it supports cancer research. So all of the likes and subscribes help to fund that. And let us know what other questions you have, considerations, so we can answer, anything that comes across your plates. Until next time, we will see you later.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Cracking Cancer. If you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, leave us a review, and visit crackingcancer.org for more information. Every dollar we earn goes directly to furthering the podcast and supporting vital cancer research. Because together, we can crack cancer.